we're doing it. We're making this butanol here at CMC, and the city of Rifle, we're going to put it in their fleet vehicles, and they're going to try it out. They're going to test it, and they're going to use it and start to offset some of their fuel consumption. So we're testing, and the consortium is testing and really looking at if and how biofuels can be done sustainably in the region. And when I mean sustainably, it's a social sustainability, it's an economic sustainability, and it's an environmental sustainability. So those are the three parameters that we're looking at. So what types of potentials are we looking at? In a back-of-the-envelope calculation, what is the potential for the region? What does this mean? So as far as biomass production, we think in the very short term that we can achieve 3 dry tons of biomass per acre per year with very little inputs. 3 dry tons per acre per year. At a conversion rate of about 80 gallons of butanol per dry ton, we're talking 240 gallons per acre per year. So out of the 4.25 million acres that we have in western Colorado, let's just take a quarter of that. Let's just take 1 million acres. If we were to grow these perennial grasses on 1 million acres, we could produce 240 million gallons of butanol a year. Now, what would that mean? So in Colorado, annually, we consume just over 2 billion gallons of gasoline a year. So if we were to produce 240 million gallons, we'd displace roughly 12% of Colorado's fuel consumption on 1 million acres of marginal land in western Colorado. So that's our goal. Potential revenue, if we're talking at $4 a gallon per butanol, this is not considering the costs of production, just the revenue. We're talking just about $1 billion of local revenue, which is pretty phenomenal. So a call to action. When we talk about bioenergy, it is certainly considered the largest agricultural opportunity in generations. We're talking about a call to action to produce 1.3 billion tons of biomass per year. That is a lot of biomass, and it will transform agriculture in America. The Intermountain West is receiving very little attention in this because it's the outlier. They're looking at the Midwest and the Southeast. That's where the Department of Energy, that's where they're looking. It's the low-hanging fruit. But we have the land resource. We have 130 million acres to start to think about and play with. It's a substantial contribution that can be made. We have to prove the West's viability now, and we have to prove it ourselves because we're getting very little help from the federal government on many things. We're working with the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Energy to start addressing some of these issues, but as far as grant funding is concerned, it is fierce competition, and those grants are going to the Midwest and the Southeast. That's where it's at. So if we really want to make this happen, we're going to have to make it happen ourselves, largely. But we can do that, and it's in our culture. And the West has largely, historically, they have not waited for national policy to make impacts for them. So it's really a call of action for ourselves to see if it works, to test if it works, and to figure it out for ourselves, and that's what we need to do. And to stress, most importantly, that renewable energy production on ranches does not mean the end of ranching. It does not mean the end of ranching. The revenue that could be generated from renewable energy production on ranches could potentially be the means to ensure ranching's future in the West. So, thank you very much.
So I know that was very exciting, and I know that you have a lot of thoughts, whether you're a rancher or a potential investor or whatever your role is. This is your time to address questions to Morgan. Okay, please.
So if I grow crested wheatgrass, I'd like to ask for a discussion on from point of harvest to the distilling facility. What are the mechanics?
The mechanics there. You know, I might defray some of those questions to Calvin's discussion. However, the logistics would largely, what we are envisioning is a single fall harvest, so one harvest a year. You take off the biomass, you transport it to a regional processing facility when it's ground. So the material is then ground into smaller particles, and then it's fed into our processing system. So there is an efficiency as far as scale is concerned, how many miles away the farm can be to the processing facility. So largely we're talking potentially baling these grasses and transporting them to the processing facility. So those are some of the mechanics involved there.
Thank you. Please, the gentleman in blue, and then...
What type of waste product is generated through the processing, and is there a use for that waste product that exists?
Yeah, we're still very much playing around with our processing technology, and it largely depends on how you process the grasses and to what you produce them into. But our system is producing a viable byproduct that can be pelletized, that we're actually going to pelletize and feed it into the cattle industry. So it's a viable, nutritive product that can be fed to livestock.
And I see another question.
Bill Peck, Community Liaison with the Forest Service.
We have a huge need in the restoration work that we are planning on the White River National Forest for seed stock. I also see a huge need here as well. So there's an economic benefit for those who have the enterprise and the input from an entrepreneur to have a seed farm in this locality to provide seed to do this. So I just want to add that as well.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. There's
Other
multiplier
questions?
effects for this.
Please.
I actually have a comment. I'm with Southern Colorado Clean Cities, which is a program of the Department of Energy. So I heard your points. And
Thank
I'll
you.
keep that back up.
Please do. I appreciate you coming here. Thank you for that.
Please.
I'm not talking marijuana, I'm talking about
Yeah. You know, hemp, I have thought long and hard about what types of things can be grown with very little inputs, and hemp is certainly on that list. However, the DEA has only permitted, they have only issued one hemp growing license in the United States in the last 20 years. And that has been into Hawaii, and it's been a 3-year trial, and that's been it. So it's so politically testy. I think there are opportunities there. I think, you know, we've actually been contacted by a medical marijuana grower in Denver to you know, what can we do with all this stuff? And you know, we're not actively looking at it ourselves as the consortium, but it's certainly an opportunity. But you have some more thoughts.
Well, I know it's only a program, but that was totally political. Never mind. All you know is political.
It's certainly political, and
The thing of it was that the federal government paid farmers $40,000 to grow hemp during the Second World War, and they used it as an alternative fuel. They
Yeah.
used it for canvas because they needed something to make tents with. It makes sails, it makes rope. It's also edible by both humans and cattle. It's just an awesome plant. I really think that you know, you're really going to miss the boat if you don't go somewhere with that. But there's actually 7 states. Actually, Colorado's actually working on passing a bill to get that where you can grow it in Colorado. There are 7 states that have it where they can grow it. It's still just like marijuana, a federal offense to do that.
Right.
It is not a plant that's used to direct it. It doesn't take a lot of water. You know, in fact, if you water it, fertilize it, and use pesticides and herbicides on it, you're going to kill it. It's a weed.
I fully concur. However, I do have to state that the federal policy does matter because a lot of this is contingent on federal tax incentives to do any of this. And I completely agree with you that we need to start looking at growing hemp for various reasons.
Okay,
Thank you for that.
There's another question here or comment?
Question on ranchers and farmers. Does the switch grasses and the crops that you're talking about growing, or the grasses you're talking about growing, does that compare equally to current crops that they're growing right now? Is there incentive to switch over from, or is it switch over from existing crops, or is there an additional incentive? I know it's preliminary in the whole scheme of things.
Well, to provide a little bit of brief overview on that, there are some federal crop incentive programs through the USDA to start farmers transitioning to different crops, and there's insurance programs, and there's a lot of incentives to do this. However, in western Colorado, we are not quite ready to start asking the agricultural community to take that risk because we don't know how well it'll work here. So the stage that we're at is we need some scaled research sites, and we need some dollars to actually answer these questions at a pilot scale before we can start providing that opportunity for agriculture. But we certainly would not be wasting our time here today if we didn't think it was viable.
We have time for another couple of questions. Please.
If you look at the Department of Defense, which is now converting a lot of its aircraft to biofuels, have you looked at them for research grants?
We have scoured all sorts of databases for research grants, and it's fierce competition. I mean, there's limited dollars for an increased amount of researchers that are vying at this. To be competitive for grants like that, you have to have huge, giant research, federal and state university research centers going after this, and the budgets for them are gigantic. So we have not looked at a Department of Defense contract, but we have looked at the various Department of Energy. It's on the radar.
It's on the radar.
Yeah. We're looking at it.
Please.
Are you working in conjunction with any small private companies?
Well, we do have some partners through Colorado Mountain College that they have courted to help donate some equipment, quite a substantial amount of equipment, to actually get our processing facility up and running. So the energy industry in western Colorado is certainly involved in the conversation, and we're looking at ways to closer court them as allies. Small businesses, though, I mean, it's very much a nonprofit and academic consortium that we have, and we kind of like that model.
I think
They
one.
would be eligible for like an SBIR grant.
Right.
I see one more question.
Have you done any work or have you had any contact with NREL?
We have contacted NREL, and we've done a little bit of work, but NREL is really not working on butanol.
Okay. Thank you, Morgan.
All right. Thank you.